So August 10th, I made contact with the state health department. This is where it got a little bit more inclusive. Because I was really concerned that potentially there could be other people out there being harmed by this. And I wanted to make it known on record that I was like, hey, like we got E. coli from eating out somewhere, and I'm gonna talk a little about the investigation right now. And so I'm not going to announce where right now, but I'm going to talk about the investigation in the next video because I wanted to make it so clear that I'm not bashing this place. But I want to make it very clear that HUS is real and you can get it out here. So I finally made contact August 10th, and I kept calling. I think the state of Utah, between the two, I called maybe about 20 times. That's how serious. I was like, hey, I'm worried that somebody else can get the exact same disease like this in this situation, and it's super avoidable. So they asked about, well, there were three specific places that stood out to me, but I'm gonna fast forward. So they talked to us August 10th, blah blah blah. I asked a number of questions like, hey, where did you eat? Did you go out of the country the last 10 days? Did you feel sick? Did your wife feel sick? Did your kids feel sick? What happened? X, Y, Z, right? They go into really detail for the last, I think, about a month, and that or so, about a month. That way, that there wasn't a time that it was developing within you. So fast forward about August to September to October. Just 2 months later, I got a call on October 8th. I had missed it, and then I called back because it was a weird number, but I called back and it's like, hey, this is so and so. I'm an intern. Pay attention to that. I'm an intern with the state of Utah. I think, what did it say? Something for diseases. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was the Department of something diseases, or I can't remember exactly. It's in my emails, but I called him. I should have recorded our conversation. I did not. I regret doing that. But at this time, he told us there was one of three scenarios they had boiled it down to. First, he said, yeah, that there was an outbreak in your area, and it was a considerable outbreak. He didn't give me any exact numbers, which I don't understand how that is against FERPA and HIPAA. I don't know. I can't remember what they stated, but they said they couldn't tell me how many people were infected. Whatever, right? Number one, he named the locations, and then he told us which one that he thought was it. So number one, they had investigated salads from Walmart, and there wasn't any traceable with that, right? Like they didn't think it was the salads from Walmart because we didn't eat there, right? We didn't get any salads from Walmart. I don't look like a salad guy, do I? But I actually like salads, but not as much as like that, and I like buying them. But so number two was buying meat from a specific grocery store in a specific time frame, and we did not do that. Number three was a location, and this is where it gets interesting because he had told us that he was like 80 to 85% sure with the data that it presented that they were sure that the location that we gave them, the others all kind of like, when you draw up on a map and they say, oh, you here, you kind of connect the dots, so to say. But this was an intern for the state. This is where it gets interesting. And so he's like, yeah, I'll get back to you. Give me a couple of days and I'll get this information over you. You just sign the consent forms or something. I can't remember what it was. It wasn't a grammar report. He's like, yeah, just send over the paperwork, whatever. I never got that paperwork. And I want to say after like a week, I started becoming concerned. So I called about a week later. No, nothing. Nobody got to me. Nobody transferred me, whatever. Like, oh, so-sos are busy. Never got to me. I called again. And, people can be busy. I get that. That happens. I called again the next week. So this is 2 weeks out. And I'm like, hey, like, what's going on? I called maybe 2 or 3 times. The next week, this is 3 weeks after this, I think the beginning of November. And I was like, hey, dude, like, what is going on? I need to know. I need some answers because you guys were telling me one story that place X was it. X marks the spot, right? And I get on the phone and she's like, oh, I shouldn't say even genders. That way they can't develop down who it was. But anyways, I'm going to edit that part out. I edited out the gender and she wouldn't be able to boil it down to who, if you guys spoke to the state, where the information came from. They told me that they should not have told me that information that I had received. that they didn't have enough evidence to support that. And I'm like, 85% is a lot. And that's verbatim what the individual told me in the beginning. And he was an intern, and I don't want to get that person in trouble. They did their job, and I'm very grateful because of the understanding I had. So come to find out, they were worried that they didn't have enough evidence, that if they suggested or said who this place was, and given the evidence they did, that they would be sued for it. They were pretty worried that the place would come after them because with the evidence they couldn't pin 100%, like 1,000% without a shadow of a doubt. I don't understand this, and so part of that is they said, well, we found, and this is how they came to the conclusion. They said they found DNA here. So the bacteria has DNA, right? Just like humans, and they're able to trace it to here and in another location across the United States. And so that says that the outbreak was local and national. But here's the thing. To me, that points to a restaurant that has a franchise anyways, because you can trace it back up to here that they have the same sort of somewhere down the line that they had it here, and you're able to trace it down, right? That's to suggest to me that it's even more likely that it was a specific restaurant. And if they got it from a vendor, that is what it is. And I actually called this restaurant. I asked them, I said, hey, is there any way, can you guys help me investigate? They told me to kick rocks. I've been pretty open about this. Like, oh no, we never got investigated. And the Grand Prairie report suggests otherwise. So that is whatever. They weren't very supportive. And I didn't even say, I wasn't going to say like, hey, I never not once accused them. I said, hey, my daughter got E. coli from eating out here, and one of the places that was investigated was this place. And I said, I'm not accusing you guys. Can you guys help me? If there any research you guys done background that maybe you got it from a specific vendor, or that it potentially could have came from one? If not, that's fine. I get it. You want to protect yourself. And I'm not saying that you're admitting it. I'm going to say, is there anybody that I can talk to that will look into your guys' vendors? Because that's what I try to come off and say like that. They weren't happy with that. Told me to kick rocks, and they were quite ignorant, and I will never eat there again. Not given this information, but because how they treated me about it. I really liked this place, the local restaurant. But the next video, I'm going to talk a little bit about that place and a little bit more in detail. I reached out to their corporate because I said, hey, would you guys, barring because I called a couple places out here, I said, would you guys help me with a GoFundMe or some sort of fundraising? Because my thing was like, oh, okay, cool. We're going to get a little bit of help with this. So what happened is at Primary Children's, a lot of the doctors work for the University of Utah, not covered by our insurance, and say half our bills came from the University of Utah, and that's where we got so many bills, blah blah blah. It don't really matter. It is what it is, right? We're out here working hard to cover that, right? But the moral of the story was, and again, I'm gonna say this, that the state and then the warnings are not to avoid that restaurant. That is not the cause of all this. The cause is, hey, look, hemolytic uremic mixed syndrome is real. You're most likely to get it from a petting zoo. But there are occasions to where you can get it from improperly cooked meat or improperly handled, right? Cross-contamination. Or you can get it from not washing your produce. So that was the point of that, is to say hey, look, there is a little girl out here, Olivia, the sweetest girl on the planet, that got it, almost died, was on life support. So you want to make sure that you wash your produce. Please, 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 I plead with you guys to wash your produce. Well, my wife already did that anyways. That is something new I did. She's ahead of the game. She's a phenomenal cook if you guys ever want some food. But the meat, we did not get in that time frame, but to make sure you cook your meat and handle it properly as well. And then and then others is make sure you read reviews on restaurants and understand that, just to make sure you call, if you're worried. And most importantly, if you go to a petting zoo, to wash your hands after, and make sure with any animal to wash your hands after with that, as a matter of fact, because the general surgeon at Primary Children's said the vast majority are caused by the improperly washing hands after handling of petting zoo animals or animals in general. And again, it's not the warning on that. The warning on the news was not to avoid that place. The warning was to avoid hemolytic uremic syndrome, specifically in children under 5. They have a lot of data that suggests that if you're under 5, you're going to get dialysis, you're going to get blood transfusions, potentially need transplants, and can be lethal. So again, avoid getting HUS. Don't avoid the restaurants, avoid it and look at the data and the research. And I'm going to post the next video on it, and I'm going to pull up the Graham report and talk to you guys about it that way. But I want to put this video out first. I said I would, but I wanted to edit it. The other one is 20 minutes long, but I want to talk about like restaurants in general. Like there's a plethora of wonderful restaurants out here that do very well, and to not avoid them. Make sure, one thing I do like to support local. That's one thing I will say, like support local. That helps out the economy quite a bit.